I'm the founder of Skirt Sports, and welcome to this amazing event put on by Sage and Sandy to honor women's equality in ultra running and trail running. Thanks. How many of you are new to Skirt Sports and never been in the store before? Yeah, I've never seen this many men.
All right, again, thank you so much for Nicole for having us in this awesome store. Just so you know, she also has a podcast called Run This World. It's awesome. I've listened to it a couple times, so definitely check it out. Let you go.
Yeah, so we wanted to do this as a Sage Running podcast. Sandy and I have a podcast. It's on iTunes, Sage Running, but also as a YouTube video too, so you could look at it later, and people all around the world, you could share it online, just so it's there, because it's a really important issue and topic that we see in our sport now, and got a lot of support for it here in Boulder, which is really awesome to see. So thanks to everyone for coming out, and we'll thank our sponsors real quick before we introduce all the panelists.
At first we have Yugo bars. They're over by the beer, so if you haven't grabbed one, definitely try it. Thing I love about Yugo bars is they use like real simple ingredients. You can look at the ingredients on the back, you know what they are, and they're also dedicated to giving back to the community, which you don't see in all companies. So if you follow them on Facebook or whatever, you're gonna see them constantly donating or giving money to different organizations, which I think is really cool. And if you use the code Sandy or Sage, S-A-N-D-I, and then Sage, S-A-G-E, on their website, you can get a discount for all their bars.
Yep, and then we'll also thank Whole Foods for the snacks in the back. And during the podcast, you guys could go out back there and get some more food there. It's mainly plant-based, but a lot of different options there, as well as you might have a couple Avery beers left back in the corner over there. And don't forget, if you didn't sign in or get a raffle ticket, we also have those going on for raffle tickets. Prizes at the end of this, but I think we're ready to...
Yeah, and also thanks to my sister who's helping with the camera stuff and ran to go get the tripod when we forgot it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. But thanks for everyone for coming out, and we'll introduce the people on the panel today.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do the panel. First, we have Sage Canaday. He runs for Hoka. He's a 2-time Olympic trials qualifier in the marathon. He was 16th at Boston, U.S. mountain running champion, and the winner of numerous ultra trail races. And then, so if I called your name on your own panel, come up here. First, I'll say Kat Bradley. She runs for Solomon. She's been second at the Bear 100. She's won Rio del Lago, which is a 100-mile, and also has a course record for that. And she was recently first at Canyon's 100K, and she did the second fastest time in course history. Next is Claire Gallagher. She runs for the North Face. She was your 2016 Level 100 champion. She's also the Ultra Running Series winner this year, which means she did really well on the 50K, 50 mile or 100K, 100 mile on attack. And then she ran D1 cross country and track for Princeton.
Well, against Sage's alma mater,
Yeah.
which is the important thing. That's the big red. Anyways.
Next up, we have Gina how do you pronounce your last name?
I don't know what else.
Gina's sponsored by Vask and Smartwool. She's run 60 trail races since 2008, having placed first in 23 of them. She was 5th at the CCC in Chamonix, France, as well as a USATF, that's United States Track and Field Association, Mountain Ultra Trail 10K champion. She was first at the Silver Rush 50 mile, and she's also the founder of Trail Sisters, which is really cool. You gotta check them out. All over social media, writes articles, and posts all sorts of informative content. So Trail Sisters, great brand. Next up, we have Silke Koster, sponsored by La Sportiva. She's been running ultras since 2008, and she was first at the Bighorn 100 in 2015. and the second American woman, 14th overall at UTMB in 2016. Next up, we have Ryan Smith. He's also sponsored by La Sportiva. Highlights include, he's been running ultra since 2008 as well, and he was 8th place at the UTMB, the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc 100, in 2015, and just ran the second fastest Bob Graham round out in the mountains, fall running in the UK. He just got back from that last night. All right, finally, oh wait, one more. Finally, we have Sandy Nypaver. She's sponsored by Rabbit, and she's the winner of numerous ultra trail mountain races from 100 miles down to 10K in distance. And just a quick audio check. Maybe, should we use the microphone? Would it be better? Sound better? It's kind of cool to use, maybe. If you want to use it, you could grab it. Maybe. I don't know. Can you guys hear us in the back okay without it, or we're good? Okay.
All right, you guys.
It's cool to use though.
I'll make you stand.
Cool. We're actually talking about the Bob Graham round, right?
Yeah.
They're jet lagged.
I'm super excited. This is like my dream panel. All these women and men are obviously amazing runners, but they're also incredibly intelligent people and even kinder. So this is super exciting. But I'm going to start off with Gina's article. She recently wrote an article for Iron Far about women versus men's pay in ultra running. And so I'm going to read a couple of statistics from that, and then we're going to start talking about that article. So, a couple of statistics. Of the athletes who participated in the survey, over 100 people from the US and Europe participated in the survey, 71% of women make $10,000 or less per year, where 71% of the men make over $10,000 per year. Second one is 49% of female respondents felt as though they deserved no more than $10,000 per year, whereas 15% of male respondents felt they deserved no less than $10,000 per year. So, for the panel, why do you guys think this is?
Okay, I'll start. First off, just so everybody is like, my reasoning for trying to do this, the positions I've held within the running community, I guess I've heard a lot from men and women competitors within the industry. I'm a team manager. I've worked marketing for a few brands. I do consultant work and also stuff in the media. So I have my hands all over the place, and I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot, and I thought it was time for somebody to kind of approach this and not make any, like, this is what we should be doing and, like, you know, pointing fingers, because to be honest, something like this is like, we all need to make a change. If we want to have a change, it's not a company, it's not men, it's not women, it's, you know, it's everybody collectively. But I thought it'd be a really good idea to kind of go out there and create this survey. And it was essentially a blind survey. Well, I can get into the details of how I did it, but I wanted to present some averages so people could see, like, where were these differences. And as Sandy just kind of rattled off some of the averages we found. So the 71% of women, make less than 10,000, whereas 71% make more for guys. I'm like, I have so many numbers in my head. And I just thought that was, like, granted, like, there's a survey and you hope everybody you ask, like, tells you the correct thing, you know, they can do whatever they want. So, but just to see, like, that kind of split is kind of amazing, you know. I think everybody knew that there is a difference, but it's kind of interesting, like, how much difference. So, so that was really important, I thought, just to present that, and then let, you know, the community as a whole take that, and then decide as a community, like, what do you guys want to do with it? Like, you know, we're strong collectively, and so if there's things we don't like about that, or if we don't care, like, that's fine either way in a sense, but we decided to make the changes together, so that's why I wanted to present that, so we all had the opportunity to decide, well, how do we want to actually, you know, handle this. I don't know if I stayed on the topic, but anyway.
Yeah. So going off what she said, I've done a lot of thinking about this in the last couple weeks, and I think, reflecting on Gina's article since she brought that out, and I think the two reasons that there is such a difference is, one, women are more afraid to ask for more. They don't feel like their net worth is as much as men do. And that's just perception. That is something that we need to change as women. But secondly, I think it's because there are less women in the sport. But if women are making less, that's less financial incentive for women to participate in the sport and ask for more. So I think evening that out first is gonna, it's like, what came first, chicken or the egg,
Yeah.
That we have to make the statement that women are gonna make the same amount to financially incentivize women to ask for more. And for women to get more involved in the sport, so like equal numbers participate.
And I'm gonna jump in really and just so you guys know, this isn't like, this kind of stretches not only like trail running, like keep an open mind with this. This is like, we're talking wide scale community and everything. It's though we're using the vessel of trail running for this, and that's essentially why we're here, is to kind of focus on that sport. But do keep in mind, like, this is a much larger issue in many other ways.
Right.
So
and you prefaced that in the beginning of the article. How many people have like at least glanced at the article just so we have an idea? Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess it would like prompt you maybe to come to this. So you know the bar graphs and stuff. As a side note, we've already talked about this as a group, but little like tidbit. Obviously, it needs to be stated that the statistics of this survey aren't completely normalized. So
Right.
Gina asked 50 people, 50 women, 62 men, 33 men responded, 34 women responded. There's no way to normalize like if the top paying women responded to that survey, and there's just no way to know. So that's just like one side note that, granted, this is a catalyst for this conversation, which is so amazing, but hopefully, in the future we can actually get some like robust statistics and maybe like a higher mean number of people responding. So that's just like for future, and other sports have had that, which is cool. Other
I've
sports.
never really seen too much written or to that same extent, like in other sports. Like, it's very kind of opaque, and I think that an important part of discussion about equality is always about transparency and like having information at hand so you can actually see what kind of problem we are facing. And I think, although I don't necessarily know what the reasons behind some of the statistics or numbers are, it's apparent there is a kind of interesting information in there, and that is telling you something. But it's good to just have that information. And I think that, I haven't seen that in just general kind of like road running or track running or anything like that. People don't want to talk about it. People don't like to talk about those kind of motivators and how much people are getting compensated. But it's a very good indication of like the biases in the sport and the kind of what's motivating people and how brands are treating people fairly. So I think it's a great starting point to have that information, and I was very happy to see some sports, and I think we're kind of leading the charge here in ultra running, actually kind of tackling it head on. And our sample size is small, but I'm pretty certain it's quite similar, probably worse in other sports as well.
There was the women's national soccer team.
Hockey.
Yes,
Yeah.
and soccer, both of them.
Both of them
Yeah.
came out and stated how much they made and enabled that transparency, and it was pretty shocking, the difference in what they made.
Yeah, and as Claire said, that was the tricky thing, and to have these athletes participate in the survey. I mean, like nobody talks about what they make, right? In anything, not sports, like just like everything ever, nobody here is going to just be like, guess what, everybody, I bring home this. Nobody says that, right? And so in a lot of contracts, a lot of times, not in all, but in some, it says like you can't speak about this. So
Non-disclosure.
which is completely fine. But that's where it's like, hey, the survey's out here. I, obviously know who I asked to do the survey, but that was for me only. And then when they, I have no idea who actually did it. I just know Megan Hicks and I kind of came up with a long list of people, and we kind of separated by like results, social status, celebrity, just like different grids. But as Claire mentioned, you don't know if like the top tier guy and only like, women that were like if you have A, B, and C women answered only, so you don't know where that falls. So that's where Claire makes a really good point. Like, this is like simply really an average, but
starting point.
Yes.
That's what's key. Yeah,
Yeah.
The means are separate enough that we're having this discussion because it's shocking.
Mhm.
Even yeah.
Yeah, there's enough there that there is like something there, you know, but to be able to get like, I think the only way you could really figure it out is like you'd have to go to every company and get every contract that has there's even a survey. No matter what survey you ever take, you can lie, nobody's gonna know, right? So it's really hard to come up with that finite, like perfect answer. So, you know.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Kelly?
I do. Why did you ask more men than women?
You know, that's a really good question.
Or
As
were you not aware? Were you
Well-
just like emailing and they all popped up? And
You know, as I was doing it there, because there were more men in the sport, I think,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like, well, and as I was doing it, I could see the response like rate coming in, and the women like, it was very quick to get a bunch of responses. Like, so I see the total like I don't know, the summary, if you will,
Yeah.
and it says like 20 people responded, and here's the collated responses. And then for the guys survey, because they were separate surveys, same questions but separate surveys, there's like 5. I was like, crap, like this batch that I did, I think I started with smaller batches, like, well, I need to have bigger batches anyway, and just kind of as it went, and I really wanted, I think statistically, I think you need to have over 13 people to have something be statistically relevant, no matter what it is, which is kind of funny because it's a really tiny number. So I wanted to get over that, and so I had to keep.
The response rate from men was lower.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I had actually asked more of them. So,
You bring up a great point. I think like the skew, correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone, on average in ultra or trail running races is 70-30, around there, give or take.
For race participation?
Race participation
In the US.
for finishers. Okay, in the US.
Yeah, it's
in
very
Europe,
different
is it
to
more
Europe.
even?
It's way worse.
Oh, it's way worse. Okay,
I
okay.
think if you look at
That's-
UTMB, I think off the top of my head, I might be wrong, it's about 10%.
It's also worse as the distances get greater too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's much lower.
Which is interesting because
doesn't tell you anything
women
about-
get faster.
But I think that it's kind of an interesting point to go back to the original question that, like, what I drew from the results survey is, I wasn't surprised at all with the fact that men are making more money. The more interesting thing was the perceived value of, like,
Yes.
the person
Yeah.
to the company. And I think it's drawn, or from a company's perspective, they're less likely to because they're looking only at participation rates in races, and I don't think that's really the big picture. I think that all people are running, not necessarily, if you're looking at just participation in races, that isn't the true picture. People are running and they're not necessarily racing,
Right.
but they are running. So companies start to think about, there's some discussion I think earlier on about this, like return on investment and like
Right.
what is the
REI
value to a
just
company. But it's like, if you're looking at just participation numbers, it's not I think you're kind of an idiot if you're just looking at race numbers for that, because that isn't the value to a brand, and I also my view when you're thinking about that is it's not a monetary value. If you're a sensible brand and a brand with ethics, you're interested in pushing a sport forward because you value the sport by itself, and it's not about a monetary return on investment. It's about, do I want to see the sport of running succeed, and do I want to get more people involved in it,
Right.
and I do, and I want to have a broad category, that's representative of the population. So it's not just women and men, but we also have to talk about minorities. Why is it all just
Right.
white men that are running?
Yeah,
So we have larger problems at stake. So I think if you looked into it, you'll find that more people are probably actually participating in the sport, but under the covers, and we don't really know who's kind of buying the product, and they're not attaching that value back to their kind of sponsorship, program. And I think they're missing kind of trick there. And most companies aren't willing to kind of be the front runner to change that.
And I think another really good point Gina brought up in her article is the purchasing power of women. We're the
Yes.
one making most of the purchases.
Yeah.
And I think a big difference between road running and trail running right now is that you have companies doing a lot to promote women. Thinking about it, I can almost name more female marathoners and track runners than I can men when I look at track and field, but I don't see that happening in trail running a lot. It's really interesting. I feel like in Boulder I get a skewed view of where there's so many good female runners where people know who the good female runners are, but if you go out of state, it's not like that way. A lot of men can't even name who won Western States last year, and to me it's kind of shocking. So I just think maybe that's part of the reason too.
We had a question over there.
Yeah, I mean, more to what you were saying, do you, as sponsored athletes, do you feel like you can bring that up to your sponsors, or?
Yeah, I think I think we should.
Yeah, I think it's
Absolutely,
always
yeah.
worth the conversation, and the more we talk about it, the better, and
Yeah.
more. But it's on us to. Social media is such a powerful thing, and like the more we post about it, and the more people respond to us posting about it, the more our sponsors and other competing companies are going to notice. And when they notice what the market is, and they notice that so and so supporting women athletics got such and such hits, that is worth, like, that has a monetary value in supporting, then that's when we start seeing the ball rolling.
I think it's back to my point about like companies should be looking to push the sport forward. People in the sport should be looking to push the sport forward. So like if somebody's a sponsored athlete, they should be looking for, a representative kind of team that's assembled that they want to be part of. So like I would want to be part of something that's a reasonably representative mix as well. So yeah, it's back to us as well to push that.
Sorry, I got another question. Who would you say is the brand that supports that the most?
You mean female or just equality?
Equality and females, moving females forward specifically.
I would speak to that. Granted, I'm new to the North Face team, but it's been really strange and awesome. There's a new VP. I mean, this is just like a little bit of insight to the company because there's been a lot of turnover. He came from the booze industry and has knows nothing about endurance sports. and he sort of started his name's Tom Herbst, head of TNF right before the Women's March, and I got an email with all the other women athletes on the team, so skiers, climbers, and whatnot, and he was like, hey, anyone who wants to go to a march, and even if you want to fly to DC, like, we'll pay for it. And that being said, though, Hillary Allen, who runs for the North Face, called him up and like within a week because she's, like a lot of us and everyone here is like, well, like, let's see where your actual feet are, and
your mind where your mouth is.
And asked, I think, some point blank questions that he couldn't answer about the men's salary just because there are non-disclosure agreements. And so, I mean, that's a problem in any sport, in any professional field, right? Where how do we, is there a legality to making this transparency? But it's pretty obvious. I know from within, like, the brand I work with, it's not even. There's 11 North Face men athletes, there's 4 women runners.
I think my answer is that I don't see a single brand that's doing a good job.
Yeah, I can speak to that too.
Like, I can't name any.
Yeah, and I think
I can name a few, but I would say that those are very small, passion-driven, small businesses where it's like a one man, one woman show, and this was their idea and their business, and they have that passion and that ethics that maybe sort of gets a bit diluted and lost in the mix when you have a big giant corporation. So I have seen, even in small things like making sure that their ambassador team is even, men and women. And these are ambassador programs where no one's making any money. You're getting some free swag and like a free hat and t-shirt, and that's about the extent of it. So it's not, we're not talking about $10,000 or anything like that, but I've seen it in those small businesses.
Yeah, but it's about who's representing the company. And it's not just about who is the best. It's about how can other companies push each other too, which I think is important. And I see the North Face pushing Salomon and vice versa. Like Salomon dedicated all of the month of May to women in response to other companies. So I think it's not just about one. I think it's about all of them making a collective effort to push each other.
Do you want to talk about Rabbit?
Yeah, I'll mention Rabbit really quick. Like, I think a lot of brands, they're trying harder because we're pushing harder, but I'll say I chose Rabbit as a sponsor because I know they support women, but I still gotta be saying they're a smaller company. They can't offer what the big companies are offering, but they started by 2 women, and so they're so passionate about promoting women's sports, which is why I love them. And I think right now there's definitely more women on both teams right now, or both their road team and their trail team. So that's definitely a brand, but again, like, they're smaller and And so they're trying to make waves, but it's a little bit harder when you're in that position.
I think it's important to mention as well that it's not just about like how a brand treats like a sponsored team, like it's a much bigger thing. It's about how they like produce products, and like are they producing like, you know, equal product lines. Like if we look at, when mentioning brands, we look at like the kind of hydration pack market, right? And if you look at like 2 or 3 different things, you'll see that it's like 80 or 90% obviously produced for guys, but like that does not reflect who's buying it. But they either don't care or they don't know. You know, both of which are bad. But like, you know, like if you look at road marathon participation numbers, now it's like over 50% participation in races are women. So like, why would we think that the participation in like trail or ultra would be any different? You know, we're looking at races, but like I said, it's not really reflective of like who's out there running on trails. So like, I think it's very naive of them to be, you know, brands to be producing product lines that are just solely kind of focused or 80% focused on kind of like guys. And I think that that's more of a telling indicator of like the bias in the market generally.
Can I jump in? Because I know it's kind of, is anybody, like, so when I wrote the article, a really big, if you read it in the comments, one of the big ones was like, well, men bring the ROI, which stands for return on investment. They're like, an ROI is king, because it's a business, right? They're there to make money. That's what a business does. So, so it's ROI. Men are bringing the ROI. The women can't do it because, you know, there's not numbers or blah, blah, blah. But you just said, right, like, there's more women in what, the half marathon and just taking
and
race.
marathon as well, I think both.
Yeah, so like, so okay, here's the deal, right? So there's a shit ton of women out there running these road sports, which is great. How much easier is it if a brand just decided to take their marketing strategies, try to convince them to trail? There's your ROI. Like, put your marketing dollars there, you will make a shit ton. And I don't know why that's like a hard thing to compute for a lot of brands, but they rather just keep doing, they're complacent, they keep doing the same thing 'cause it's comfy. But there's a whole sea of dollars and women are spending. I'm like, it infuriates me because I'm like, seriously, there's all these, like, it's way easier to get a woman road runner to try running on trails than to say like, hey, you know, basketball, like, why don't you try running trails? Like, good luck on that conversion. But it's there, but nobody wants to take that jump. And that's really frustrating. And the fact that corporate, you know, and it doesn't matter, it's not at a community level, that is 100% company corporate. Like, they're the ones with the power to make the marketing to reflect that and to put, you know, their strategies out there to actually get the women to like, hey, I want to try this out, and they're the dollars. And like, I stand behind that 1,000 times through. So, sorry, I get like super passionate about that because I'm like, ah.
Sorry, ask your dinner. I can't like actually see all of you guys do. Okay. So the point that you're making about the return on investment brings, I think, sort of full circle a thread that's running through everything you guys are saying, which is this perception piece. Like, why was it interesting in the article, as Ryan pointed out, that women perceive themselves as deserving less? For the same reason that the companies perceive the ROI as not being tied to the women athletes, which is bullshit if they're actually the people buying or doing it, right?
Well,
so where do all of these things come from? And obviously we have this whole huge cultural history we're coming out of where there are less women coming out being trained in athletics, and where women are in all of the workforce receiving a percentage less income. So this is the norm, right? This is the standard, and all of us, men and women both, have this sort of subconscious ingrained thing where women are taught how to say, I'm going to take a job that's harder for me and I'm going to ask for more money. And these bits all play into this. And just, I'm a contracts lawyer. I've actually, some of you guys know this, and I'm, you know, have to keep confidential any of the details of this, but I've negotiated a contract on behalf of a woman athlete in exactly this situation. And what the company says in the scenario, these were 2 women representing a very large company in negotiating her contract. They said, well, we have a metric by which we measure the athletes on our team, men and women both. And this woman knew, because, you know, teams make friends and these things get shared even though you're not allowed to share them.
Oh, yeah.
She knew
100%.
that the male athletes that were younger in the sport had less podiums, which was one of the major metrics that they were pointing to, ran less races. So by all of the things which this person's showing up in basically being an advertisement, right? These other people were not in any metric as valuable as she had been in her racing years that she could point directly to. So we're talking objective data. And these are the types of metrics. They're saying they want you to be good at speaking. Well, she's great at speaking. They want you to be podiuming. You want to be participating in races. These were all things she could check the box higher. And as we sat there and said, well, she does that, they were like, well, you know, and the men, and this is, I think, really key, we're not having to have these conversations. We're not fighting in this way, right? There's a norm in place. And because there's a norm in place, people believe in the norm. So of course the men think that they deserve more, they're getting more.
Right.
And of course the women think they don't deserve more because they're not getting more. The norm is comfortable, and that's all sort of how we normalize our thinking.
The scale we're talking about for a lot of us, or you know, it might be a big part of our income, or maybe for whatever, you know. And we talk about other jobs very openly and salaries openly, and why something like actually as not to belittle, but like trivial as sport, right, in the grand scheme of things, talked about so confidentially. And I'm saying this because I'm like, why do I talk about it to you? So I think you bring up a good point. And yeah, you should maybe like start a full-time business.
Like you said, the disclosure part, like that's huge. And when I was going through, like, so when I had done the survey, some women had, and men actually, both sides, had written to me, and unsolicited, that was on their, you know, and I'd never ever repeat anything I had, you know, heard from them. But a lot of it was like, they wanted to spill the beans, you know, and I was kind of like, holy crap, don't want to know this, because, you know, but so I learned a lot more than I really ever hoped to learn. And I kept thinking to myself, like, the whole disclosure thing, the reason why that's in place is so companies, like you said, can continue to, you know, have, like, you know, differences. Because if you were able to talk about it, you know, with each other, then of course you're going to complain, you're going to cost them money, and that's going to affect their bottom line and whatever bonus they take home at the end of the year, you know? So thank you for bringing that point up, because I think that's one way that as athletes that have a voice, or, you know, or even anybody that, you know, would want to support that, stating that to the sponsors or the companies would be a huge push in the right direction.
And I want to say something else, like, regardless of pay for professional athletes, like, because more men in the sport are represented and sponsored and are able to do this full time, that's representative of the general population participation. So of course more men are gonna participate in the sport, and of course there's going to be this crazy 70-30 percentage.
It's a feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly. It's a feedback loop, because so many more men are represented in the sport. So, you know, men inspire men. Like, no one has a female athlete to look up to. What question?
So there's a huge growth in trail running, and I'm wondering if we have any numbers on the gender growth on either side, whether it's growing faster among women versus men statistically. So obviously men were already in it at a higher number, but is it percentage-wise increasing to reflect the road running?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if anyone here knows the answer to that.
They're doing these events for the ROAS. I would like it, or as many people like it. But when they sit there and they like, well, nobody's there for the female finisher. Like, so there's obviously not a lot of women that care, or why would they want to buy products, or so that, like, I know it's silly, that's just one race example, but like showing up, I think, you know, somebody said, you know, I think you answered that yourself, like, and just always, if you have the chance to give, like, you know, a female, you know, just a pat on the back with a, you know, a like or whatever, a nice message, or like just inspirational things like that, like all of that stuff adds up the more you do that. And the last thing I'd say, I actually put this in the article, and this is a little extreme, but if you're really curious and to kind of press the buttons on the company, and I can tell you almost no company has this anywhere, so it would force them to actually do something, but ask them what their policy is. Like, one lady on the comments says, like, thanks for writing this, like, I actually wrote to, like, these 4 companies to find out, like, how they do treat their athletes. I highly doubt she ever heard back, but it's good for the companies, like, oh, some people they're yeah, like, this could be an issue down the road, maybe we should start thinking about it. And a lot of companies, going off topic, but I kind of went to for this one little point, I think a lot of companies they see the female push right now, like, you know, not going to talk politics, but all of a sudden there was a big shift. There's a big march. There's a lot more like female empowerment, which is awesome. You see some companies jumping on board with, yeah, let's go for that. But I challenge those companies to not only just like brand it, but treat the people that you have in your team and your company like financially and other ways. Like I just don't want to like see your advertisement that you're on board. I want to see action. Because I think that's
just to the month of May.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm not picking on any companies. Like I want to stay neutral. I'm not here to like finger point or anything. But I think that speaks volumes. Like action over words or advertisements are one thing, but like there can be so much more that can be done. And that's when I'm like, hey, like if you're really on board and you really want to support it, do something more than So
I mean, I have my 2 cents, and then I want to go back just a little bit. But my thing is to always just share articles or podcasts, or if there's an awesome women's race that just happened, talk about it. Or when Iron Fart interviews women, share it. We just don't see that happening very much. Or like the worst thing is when there's a race and the men get all the press, even though a lot of times, like in the past year, I've seen like the women's race was actually more exciting, but nobody knows it because no one's sharing the results or talking about it. So definitely share more articles and podcasts and stuff about women, especially like if you like it, share it. But I want to go back just a little bit to Gina's article. There's a really interesting quote, and I'd actually like to hear what Sage and Ryan think first before we all chime in. So the quote is, "When speaking with potential male respondents, I received a mixed bag. Some were super excited to participate in the survey, but others were fearful. Concerns of sharing their stipend salary information could result in a pay cut because of a potential balancing act." I thought that was kind of a powerful statement, so what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised at that kind of sentiment, kind of disappointed at it. I certainly am, because, I wouldn't, in anything in life, I wouldn't want to be benefiting in anything at the expense of someone else. I'd be much happier, maybe I'm not like monetarily driven, and certainly I'm in the, I have another job, so like I'm not necessarily as like, like sensitive about the actual compensation or anything, but like I wouldn't just feel comfortable that other people aren't being treated fairly at the expense. I think it's a very short-sighted and kind of pathetic stance to take that, yes, I might suffer because someone else, is going to, be treated the same as me. I think it's a very poor viewpoint. So yeah, very disappointed that people would even think about that.
Yeah, I was excited to answer Gina's survey, although I probably was one of the people that didn't answer it right away. But I don't answer a lot of emails right away, so I'm slow.
I don't even know if you'd like, well, thank you for doing it, because I have no idea what you did.
I was glad to see that, and I was probably even more surprised and disappointed about some of the responses I got. Even posting social media stuff on some of these topics, I actually get a lot of backlash sometimes, always from guys, which is, of course, you see a lot of bias, and I think that's really the problem. But in terms of like competition for a salary or sponsorship perks and things like that, I don't see it as competing against women. Actually, I'd probably be more competitive against other guys fighting for a contract. But as like Ryan said, you shouldn't really. You should get paid for your contribution to the sport and how you are as a person, really. And people talk about return on investment, ROI. I think that's really hard to measure, actually, directly. I mean, you can give someone a promo code and say like, oh, well, this person sold 100 pairs of shoes this month, so they're really influential, but it doesn't always correlate like that. I mean, what's the value of talking to people in person at a race, like in-person marketing? And from what I've seen from different contracts, there's just huge discrepancies. People talk about social media power, but it's correlated to how many followers you might have on social media. But again, it's about, like what Sandy said, I think women, more articles need to be shared by other people about interviews with women, race coverage with women, and you definitely see a discrepancy with coverage and interviews and things like that. And it's getting better, but it's something you have to speak out against because it's definitely not fair.
I mean, I think if a company truly wanted to lead the charge, in something, I would like to see somebody try something new, and that maybe they're transparent about actually what they're offering, and maybe they treat it as like, hey, we're actually a team here, so maybe here's the pool of money for the team, and we just split it. you know, and then it's better down the road because, like I say, it's pretty much impossible to say what the ROI is. And like, if you have a good team, it's like that's the brand, right? It's the team. And I think that like you should be looking at it like that. And maybe a company shouldn't be so fearful of like hiding this information about things. Maybe they should be like, oh, well, you know, we've got like, I don't know, you make a couple $100,000 that we're going to throw into like putting together a team. And, you know, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to divvy it down. And I think if somebody was a company was willing to kind of do that, I think that would be pretty nicely received. You know, and it's obvious and they're fair and they're like, wow, you know, somebody's actually doing something different and like trying something new. But right now, nobody wants to like try anything like that.
And that model works because if a team as a whole does well, they're supporting each other, and if a team as a whole does well, then everyone is incentivized, everyone on the team, regardless. And that's why that works, because then the men support the women and vice versa in all performances. But
yeah, and that's just like any company culture.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like brand, I guess.
Yeah.
And what's an interesting side note though is like, you know, I think the bigger companies have, you know, they have the power to pay their women equally, 100%. And it's the smaller companies that are promoting women athletes when they don't have necessarily that huge endowment behind them. That's just interesting.
And here's like also like a side tidbit. If you think about it, there are companies that have, I mean, so you have your top athletes, right? They're podium finishers. And in the survey, with the questions, most people said what they thought pay should be based on, or, you know, is podium finishes. But if we talk about who's really driving the ROI in the marketplace, it's the influencers. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the influencers are not the top tier people. It is the people that actually usually don't get paid anything. Maybe every once in a while we'll get some kind of like bump for an affiliate, something other. But those are the people that are probably, no offense to anybody, but probably the most valuable in the team. And they get diddly. And so like, sorry, I told you, I get really passionate about this. Like I said, I've been all over the map, position-wise with this, so I've seen it all over. And so funny enough, it's just like, when you think about pay and just how things are divvied up, you're like, geez, if you're really concerned about who's going to bring you those sales, it's the influencers. It's really not the podium people, but they usually promote the podium people the most, thinking that, well, look, this person won this race, so I need to have that shoe too. But that person's not talking and not doing their thing, and you have, you know, this influencers that at every race or just super like on social or whatever, that person's probably going to sell more just because of word of mouth and emotional marketing, which is in person talking. Like,
well, it's hard to gauge, right? Because like, and you know, we could stay here for 10 hours and just go back and forth of like who actually has the biggest ROI, right? An influencer or a top athlete. But if you have a top athlete who's like super prominent on social media, you know, right? Well, then there's like no competition. So maybe like, I don't know if we were gonna go there, shifting the conversation to this like perception and empowerment issue, like is that where we can actually have more of an impact, which talking about what can anyone do. And Silke brought this up earlier, also just talking as a group, empowering young girls, I think is one of the biggest potential spots of opportunity. It has nothing to do with ROI, right? But it's like looking out for the future generations. Did you have a question, Rob?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a great panel, so a lot of this is good information for me. When I started running, the longest race that women could do in the Olympics was only 3,000 meters, if you can imagine that. They would go to road races and there would literally be no women in a road race. So I think it's just good, from my viewpoint, it's just to point out the fact how much progress all you ladies have made. I mean, it's remarkable in such a short time. I mean, it's not that long ago that women weren't even allowed to run in races in the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
And there was no, I mean, talk about getting paid to go running, you weren't even allowed to run. So I think it's remarkable. So I think it's kind of like training, like for a marathon, just take the long-term view, and it's remarkable progress that the ladies have made. I mean, it's going to just keep getting better. I mean, you can't, there might be guys in companies that are trying to hold you back, but the tide's already moving, and Nicole can speak to that. But even when Nicole started, I mean, she's talking about influencers. She's one of the great influencers, and right up on the wall there, she's got her first skirt. When she started doing triathlons, there was no gear for women, was it?
Right.
Yeah. And there was no prize money. There was no equal prize money.
Well, actually, there was, but we didn't get as much bonuses as the guys, you know, because that's driven more by the corporations and the sponsors, right? But yeah, you guys know Mike Sandrock, don't you? Yeah. He's a rock star. Legend, right? But you're right, you know, I've been thinking, this is really interesting. So many things have come to my mind because obviously I started a women's clothing company because the other companies out there weren't making the things that I wanted that fit me, right? So starting a wave, boom, there. And I keep thinking about like, what's really gonna push the tide more? Is it trying to talk the existing companies into changing the way they operate or the existing crowd, or getting new people into the sport and creating more awesome personalities? You know, we don't sponsor pro athletes, but we have about 800 ambassadors all over the country, and they're micro influencers. And one of our best influencers is a woman named Myrna. She's 220 pounds. She runs ultras, and she's about the slowest person out there, but she has made a name for herself on health at every size, right? And so the elite athletes are super important because that's what keeps sport kind of exciting, right? You want to drive and cheer for the winner, and how hard can you push yourself, and how many times can you puke before you finish, you know, and all that. But those people also need to be inspiring the masses. So I don't know, it's cool because there's 35% to 65 women, right? But we need more women running out there. So I think we just need to be louder. Maybe that's part of it.
I had a quick comment. Does anybody remember Rory Bazio, UTMB?
Yes.
Basically, you know, she wanted kicked ass, but said, I'm not coming back until there's equal pay for women. Was there any pushback from North Face, or what happened after that? Because I know she spoke out, and what this comes down to is really changing the culture. And it can happen very quickly. It's happened in the past, but you know, it's people through social media from the bottom up, and also people from the top down doing it. You shouldn't have to put your neck out there saying that, you know.
She didn't come back, and then it took 2 years though.
Yeah.
Now there's equal, they're top 10 in both men and women at UTMB get prize money.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, that's a case in point. That'd be awesome to have that opportunity, you know.
Yeah.
And that just shows that speaking out does work.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's important that going back to like the survey and how men were afraid that the survey, answering the survey and like the feedback from the survey was going to impact their own income. But it's also important, like, to make changes. We do have to make sacrifices, and I think in the long term that is okay. Rory made a sacrifice. She didn't return to a race that it's an amazing race, you know, and she made a sacrifice, but not by not returning to her own running career, you know. But it made a statement and it made changes, and for that it's worth it for all of us. Like, all of us are so grateful for it. I've never run UTMB, but now because of that, like, I'll have a more equal opportunity there, in whatever sense.
Yeah, we're talking, but like that stuck with you, and like I think a lot of us, you know, have heard that story, and that's kind of like, I mean, you know, you don't have to be like the best buddy with Rory to really respect that this woman put herself out there. And so, you know, if somebody would be, you know, if she was sponsored, didn't like that, I mean, she has this whole sea of women behind her thanking her for that, and that probably would, for her, would probably be more of a worth it in the long run. So
I've seen several other athletes, also female athletes, race that with other races that don't give equal prize money.
You did that.
But even this year, you know, Emily Forsberg posted something on social media about a race that didn't. You know, and there was a lot of back and forth about it, but I think it's worth calling races out on that, you know, and it's frustrating for change.
And these days it's fairly quick to, you know, when they see this, and it's lo and behold, everyone does, but like, hang on a minute, there's a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of it, because, you know, a lot of participants aren't looking at the prize purse and something.
Right.
You know, they don't really care about it, and that's reasonable. But like, you know, most people who care about it will be like, hang on, that's absolute crap. Like, you know, and then, you know, so like these, like the one, I think it was one in Aspen or something. And then the one that Emily talked about, like within a day, they're like, oh yeah, okay.
it's the one with Jamil too.
Yeah,
The 24 hours.
It's almost like
Makes you
comical when
change
I
that.
read the threads and the conversations going on, and just seeing the same, just useless arguments put forward about why they do it. It's just, I feel embarrassed for these people.
almost.
That actually
really tragic.
segues perfect in the next thing I want to talk about, which is about, well, I'm going to refer to the U.S. mountain running. The U.S. mountain running championship just happened this weekend. It was the first time in history that there's the women and men run an equal distance, and 4 men and 4 women are going to Worlds. Typically, it's 6 men and 4 women, so the first time ever. It's a huge victory for most people, but it wasn't for everybody. So I want to read 2 different viewpoints and then discuss it. First one is from pretty well-known male mountain runner who's actually won a lot of championships. He said, on one hand, equality is important, and I want athletes to have similar opportunities to make the national team. On the other hand, is it fair that a runner misses making the national team, placing 1 minute behind the winner in the men's race? Yet in the women's race, the last woman to make the team finishes nearly 4 minutes back from the winner. Then another comment is about the team size. It was more related to participation numbers in recent years than related to sexism. This is something many people don't understand in terms of team size specifically. And I see the logic in these comments, but it's hard to necessarily agree.
In the minute one, there's absolutely no logic because
Well, smallest violin is playing.
Yeah.
Like the answer there is like no sympathy, run faster. Like I mean, like boo fucking who? Like no one. Like I have 0 sympathy.
because that's more of a comment of how kick-ass the top woman is.
Yes.
And then the guys are
It's like
saying,
very apples and oranges.
yeah.
So that could be easily swapped and would
Yeah.
a person be.
I think the other one is the more common argument that I see about drawing parallels with participation. There's usually, I don't want to change anything because I'm too lazy or stupid or, I don't see a problem with it. And that's what they're basically saying is that like, they draw parallels. Oh, there's just not enough women participating in this.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be fair. It's completely irrelevant. The second thing is it has nothing to do with like the relative competitiveness of the top end of the field, right? Like you might have like 2,000 guys in UTMB, but like most of them could be back-to-backers, and you might have like 100 top end women in there. So it's irrelevant the participation size to like the competitiveness of the field.
Quality over.
Yeah, exactly. So like I would rather just be fair, and like again, it's about doing something. To Jeannie's point earlier about like doing some kind of action to want to change it. And what a lot of the comments I see are like, we don't want to do anything.
You're scared.
I want to wait for a change to come before I do anything. And I'm really tired of seeing that argument. I want if it isn't fair or you can't think of anything, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do something to like change it for the better.
And to one of those quotes, I think what disappoints me the most about the first one is the perspective that the men lost a spot, as opposed to the fact that they probably shouldn't have had more spots to begin with. So it's just sort of how you sort of see that.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the money quote from before, like they thought because women's get more than they get less.
And I just want to say background information on that team. I've been on that team. It's a fully funded trip. You get a free trip basically to Europe to mountain race, and you get Team USA gear, and it's a big honor. And it used to be 6 men would get to go on this team at the U.S. Championship, but then they'd only take 4 women. And so for it to be, and the women would run, what they run, 8K?
Yeah.
And the men would run 12K. And
so really nice.
so if you're a distance specialist, you want to, like Sandy and a lot of these women, like you want to run a 10K like the men, and why wouldn't you run the same course that the men would run? Like it's just kind of a no-brainer. So this was the first year that they had equal team size, spread the funding equally, raced the same distance, 10K. But unfortunately, because of that, they decided to cut the team size down. So instead of 5 and 5, taking 10 athletes total, before they're taking 6 men, 4 women, that would have been 10 athletes total. They decided to only take 8 athletes total, 4 men, 4 women. It's still a victory because it's equal, as it should be. And I think that brings up the issue of equal opportunity is really the theme there, is because there should be equal slots for men and women, just like there should always be equal prize money for men and women. It's just a no-brainer. It doesn't matter. And in a lot of races, the women's field is more competitive than the men's, but you'll see comments online by a bunch of guys that say like, "Oh no, that's
more exciting to watch this race." So.
Yeah, the men's field's definitely more competitive, but I mean, statistically, it's sometimes hard to go through, but you could easily tell just from the nature of some races that the women's field is more competitive than the men's field, even if the field size is smaller.
Preparing for this, I got asked by men, like, oh, what can I do? And my first thought was, talk about women's races too, and talk about the female athletes, because, or especially like he was referring to like his young daughters too. It's like, well, if she only ever hears you talking about male athletes and male races, that's gonna affect her, and like, you just like, oh, it's just male races that are important. So I think that's something all men could do as well.
Of course, a random thing. So one thing, this kind of ties to a few things, but one way I think to help, women's participation in the sport, or to get companies to be aware, like, hey, women want to, like, they're interested in this, is, kind of ties a little bit into what Claire had said earlier, but asking them for more women's product, not like a unisex that they paint and shrink, like something that's like solely women's, like it actually, like, it was fit on a woman, it wasn't fit on a man first and then modified, like it is straight up for a chick. And and none of this, like, a lot of shoes will have like I can't even think. I'm like, what can I say that doesn't offend any brand? We'll just call like Blues Clues, for it'll be the Blues Clues, and it's the women's Blues Clues. Well, we don't want it to be the women's Blues Clues. We just want it to be Purple Clues. I don't know. I'm not very good at coming up with a rant, but like why does it have to be like the men? Yes, like I think kind of calling out to different companies, saying like, where's this specific for us? We don't want the shifted model, because that has nothing to do with being an elite athlete or anything. That is just pure and simply like the right to like have something that's for you. And I think if these companies had more of like the fire in their butt that women want that specifically, they'd see like, oh wow, there are a lot more women out there that are interested in running, and they would be, maybe more of them would be more apt to race or blah, blah, blah. But I think one way of kind of growing that awareness is to actually ask them for those products. And I think we all appreciate, like, female-wise, like stuff that was actually like really for us, not modified for us. So I think we're at a point where we don't need modifications. We like.
Going back to what she said, it's like when we modify, just simply modify, pink and shrink. Hate that term.
Yeah.
I worked in retail, it exists everywhere. When we just modify the men's product, that is giving it, like, the deep-rooted issue with that is that it's giving men more credibility than women. That men are more capable of design, like whether it's just negligence or laziness, the statement it's making is that the men can design the product better than women. Regardless of whether that's the intended statement, that is what it's saying, and that's unfortunate.
Or like a man's body is the normal body.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll just add the space for boobs and
Exactly.
These irregular things.
I think there is, like, what you just said, I think there's like really small, maybe subtle things that can have a huge impact, like, calling, having the shoe, and then having, oh, this is the women's version.
You do a much better job.
But the shoe is by default the men's one, and it's the same thing that I see, with races. They're like, oh, Ryan was the race winner, and Kat, oh, she was the female winner. Like, she was also the race winner, right? So just even small ways that we refer to things as, I think, can make a huge sort of shift in how people just by default see things and approach things.
As an example of a positive thing that's been happening when it comes to packs, Stephanie Howe just designed this pack. You guys have probably seen it for Nathan. And she is really proud of it. It's doing insanely well. It's selling better than Rob Krar's pack. And they both designed them from scratch. And this wasn't like, I think Stephanie, she's a really, she has a strong voice for herself and just like what she wants, period. I don't think there's anything gender related, but like, it's people like her in this one, she had the opportunity to be like, okay, we'll go off the old Nathan pack, or actually no, let's make this take another extra year. Let's start from scratch. and it's selling like crazy. And I run for UD, so I'm like saying this like completely unbiased. I'm really proud to see that has happened. That's a great, and I think we should celebrate examples like that.
And it's also an example of us making a voice for ourselves, if we don't like it, regardless of whether we're Stephanie Hat, we can't all design naked packs, but it goes back to if you want a new pack, and if you notice that the men's pack just has a spot for boobs, like Julia was saying, then say something, say something to the company. They, if enough people say it, then people will respond to it, and then that feedbacks into more women coming into the sport because there's gear for them and there's role models for them.
So this controversy is a couple of years old, I believe, and not to pick one of Sage's sponsors, but the Udi oil ads that came up a couple of years ago with the guys looking all runnerish, and the women in small black dresses. And so as that controversy heated up, the women sort of spoke up and said, no, we want to be in the black dresses. I'm really conflicted on that. On one level, I say, okay, a woman should be able to say that was my choice. On the other side, we're still dealing with this sort of standard sexist division. The whole issue sort of died, and I haven't seen anything like it since. But I'm just wondering from you guys what your perception of that whole ad controversy was.
I think it's okay to be feminine, and I think skirt sports is a perfect example of it. We want to be cute, we're or
you can't, you can. We doesn't necessarily mean
maybe, but
I want to be cute.
Yeah, exactly. If I want to wear a skirt, that's awesome. And I think it's that's the same. That example reflects running the way the apparel divides the whole options, and that's what they wanted to do. So great.
I think just because I know Stephanie was involved in that ad too, and she was excited about the photo shoot. They liked it, but I think it was unfortunate because it was such a juxtaposition with the men's ad, and that was kind of the problem.
They weren't pictured as runners; they're pictured as women.
Yeah,
and that's fine. But you guys were pictured as badass
shoes
runners.
on her shoulder.
Right,
and
I think the marketing really screwed up.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's marketing.
And then I remember seeing the ad actually for the first time, and I had exactly the same thing. I was the men's one came out first, and I was like.
Yeah, and the men's ad came out first, and then the women's ad came out, and it was too related that it was it was really unfortunate. But they weren't thinking.
I think it's interesting as women, we can become conflicted on, well, I want to be able to walk around in a tiny black dress, but I also want to be taken seriously as an athlete.
And for me, I was like, okay, it's a silly campaign all the way around. And I thought the women looked amazing and beautiful, and I just got out of hand on social media. And
that's a good point. I have a question that literally speaks to carrying the burden of, and I don't mean this in a negative way because Silke is pregnant. But you three, Kat, Claire, and Gina, I can't speak for Grandma because I don't know. Because they're a women-based, run by women, I suspect I know the answer to that, but I do know the answer to the question I'm going to ask you. What will happen if any of you three get pregnant during your contract? And again, I know the answer to this, from Salomon, Vask, or the North Face. Do you know that? What happens?
Well, that's technically
illegal. Yeah. Technically, it's illegal to have a contract
for pregnancy.
Yeah,
I think it would terminate in 6 months or something. It would be
They can't terminate your contract. No, legally. Actually, there's some.
It's not about terminating. It's about renewing.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, they can't kick you out. But so men obviously aren't getting pregnant.
What is the term?
There's a term that if you can't run for any reason, they keep it as broad as possible.
Yeah, it's frozen is the term. I met with an athlete about 3 weeks ago, and we had this very conversation. A very high-profile athlete in a very well-known brand. Several of you in here are wearing this brand. And she specifically asked, what if fill in the blank? And her answer, the answer she received was, it will be frozen.
Well, because
instead of taking that leap and being like, shit, we're gonna support Silke, you are pregnant, let's start a Last Sportiva pregnant line, we will shut this up. How huge of an opportunity is that? Because I know how active you are, you're out there every single day.
Yeah, well, talking to people,
If you don't know that answer, you need to look.
Silke is an example because she started the Rocky Mountain Runners with the two Ryans over here. She is hugely influential in this community, you know. But it's unfortunate that like our value is only it's solely based on like performance, and it doesn't matter if Silke is like around wearing shoes and talking to like all of Boulder. This run club that she started, I mean, it's how I know all of these people. You know, it has thousands of people following it, but like
Ryan's
that
contract won't be frozen because his wife is pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. But like her value. I'm not saying this specifically about Silke, but like the value is not placed in like. And it goes back to like how hard it is to measure that. It's not based on like
You're producing a mini consumer.
Exactly.
So it should be like, they should keep you on board, be like, hey, now there's two.
Yeah.
I think the issue that you raise is also twofold. And something that you said about this woman asking, you know, in advance, that takes a lot of guts.
That's smart. And it's
no
good
guts
on
for her, whoever it was that asked.
She's a pop star. Thank God. I mean, be a voice, not an echo, right?
Yeah. And it's hard there's a certain amount of risk that you carry, and this isn't just in running, and specifically, you know, with any job that you have in going, you know, up to your boss and saying, you know, what would happen if I got pregnant? Are they gonna skip you for a promotion next year because they're thinking any moment now this is gonna happen, and so are they gonna overlook you for things, you know? So it's a bold thing to even have the courage to ask before, you know, just as a hypothetical, you know. So there's that aspect, and then of course
And that's all in kind of, I'm sure a lot of people here read the book Lean In, which is more of the workforce. Sheryl Sandberg, who started this women's movement of Leaning In, and the stats are out there and they're horrible. And then it doesn't even go into someone who uses their body for their job, you know, so. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. For
Sorry.
It's pretty late, so I want to start wrapping this up, but I just want to end on one note on why is this even important. Like when I talk about these issues, I have people tell me there's so much more other important issues. Why does women's equality in running even matter? And I'll start with my point, is going back to US Mountain running. When that decision was made by a group of different countries, there was a lot of countries who were against it. And so to me, part of this discussion and part of women's mountain running being equal shows women, even in other countries, that they deserve more. And so that's one of my reasons why we need to talk about this issue, but I'm interested to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I think we set it like on a small scale, trail running, it considers an example for all women's athletics. And as a nation, as Sandy said, we can set an example that we deserve equal coverage, equal rights, equal pay, maternity, like respect for maternity. And I think that was a great point. And that's truly why
I see that argument a lot. Yeah, when any kind of threats like this come up, it's always often used in kind of a political discussion about like, why should we care about something like this. I see it as just a distraction technique because someone doesn't want to change something or don't want to like, you know, discuss it essentially. And everything is important because it's a reflection of how we, you know, about our values. And it's like, yeah, it's just trail running, but it's how we kind of view, you know, the kind of each other in the society that we want to live in. You know, how we treat people fairly in trail running is how we treat people fairly in the workplace and anywhere else. So everything is important, and you know, yeah, you can't focus on everything all at once, but it's not a, you know, zero-sum game. You can care about lots of different things at the same time, and you choose to spend your energy where you want, and that's fine. But like apathy is always the, you know, it's certainly never the answer. It's always the worst kind of trait in people.
I mean, like everybody has a mom, you know, like you know, some people are married, have a wife, have a daughter. Like I hope it's, you know, some level, whatever your affiliation is with a female or, you know, or whatever, like and obviously women in general, it's like, if you think about it, it's like, don't you want them to have the same opportunities as everybody else? Like, I love to ask, you know, I got some flack from some guys when I had done that, and that's fine. Everybody's totally entitled to their opinion, 100%. I respect that. But I asked them, you know, like, well, are you married, or do you have a daughter? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, do you want your daughter to have like the opportunity to play sports, or for her to be able to make the same amount on a job as a guy if they're, you know, equal, you know, they have the same education? They have like, is that important to you? And he's like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, just because we're using this in like the aspect of ultra running or whatever, like it all ties together, and you know, it's just one vessel to get to that same argument. It's important, you know. And I didn't hear back from him, but I mean, like it's really to everybody. And last thing I'll say is like, yes, as women we need to obviously voice things as well, but I actually think for the guys that support us, that actually I think almost has more weight, because like it's not one against the other, but I think if we have the guys that like are like, hey, we're all for it, we want this for you too, like I think that shows a lot of people that are in the high places, regardless if it's a man or a woman, it shows like, wow, both sides want this. It's not just women like looking after it, like everybody wants it. So I think, you know, having guys play a large role in that is like actually just, yeah, super essential. So women, speak up. Guys, please also speak up. You're very influential as well. That's all I have.
I think, really quick, great point about the, how dangerous it is to be apathetic of, say, this trail and ultra community, because like, oh, we're all super privileged to be in this community, and there's, yeah, way worse situations going on, and I struggle with that all the time. I think about it all the time. I'm like, why am I wasting my time talking about inequality in trail running when there's like X, Y, and Z, you know, way worse going on? And then I have to hit myself because everything's local. It's like all politics or whatever, you know, the term is local, and so if the one things I do have my tentacles in, if I'm not changing those, then I have a problem. And so thank you for like re-saying that, because sometimes I feel paralyzed, you know. It's like at the end of the day, you know, we're all so lucky to even have the opportunity to trail run. But this is still a huge problem, and like this conversation is getting me really riled up, you know, to talk to the brands I work with and whatnot. So it's really powerful setting examples.
I think that's an awesome place to end it. Thank you guys so much. That was great.